Hey everybody, what is going on? HexLex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. So today we are going to be covering tier limits. Coming back to a pure tier limits build. I actually don't remember if last time I was still on Horus tier or not. I know I did cover that. I think I did it twice, but as time has gone on, I think that we can see, particularly from like tournament results, but also from I guess just general tier limit decks coming in and looking at the statistics of how often certain cards are played, that I do think quote-unquote pure limits or tier limits without Horus or any fancy kind of synchro package does actually end up being the best way to play this deck. Tier limit is funny because it's kind of like Cash Tira in a way that like, oh, it's kind of surprising that this deck with all the limits has still managed to be so popular and, you know, see a lot of play, right? But it's actually a lot less surprising once you take the helm and play the tier limits deck. I have always been a huge fan of how Master Duel handled hitting tier limits. I think this is a great example of what a ban list should do to a deck. That is to say, you know, curb it if it's doing too much, which I don't think anyone can argue that tier limits wasn't, but at the same time still leave the deck playable. It's why I'm so opposed, right, when people talk about Snake Eye, for example, and they're like, just ban Flamberge and the deck is unusable. It's like, well, yeah, then the deck is unusable. Without Flamberge, there's no incentive to play the Snake Eye strategy at all. And back when tier limits was tier 0, people said similar things about the tier limits deck. They were just like, oh, just ban Kick Close and like all the fusers and just make the deck unplayable. And it's like, well, no, the deck should not be unplayable. I don't think that's the goal. That should be the goal anyway of a ban list. Again, I think the idea should be to rein the deck in, but still keep it in a place where like people who want to play this deck can play it. Tier limits also unlike Cash Tira, which I do think that Cash Tira, despite its popularity, is still probably like a mid tier 3 deck. I think tier limits has definitely earned its spot as like one of the best tier 2 decks. In fact, when trying to figure out what tier I think Yubel is at, I kind of compare it to tier limits in a lot of ways. Like, do I think Yubel is better or worse than tier limits? And I still don't know if I know the answer to that question. I think Yubel might be slightly better, but I don't know if it's enough better to be a tier 1 deck. I might be willing to call Yubel tier 1, but below Fire King, Snake Eye, and also probably Rescue Ace. But anyway, this deck isn't about Yubel or tier list, it is about tier limits. So yeah, I went with just a very, very standard build here, and I had a blast playing it. This is some of the most fun of these games that we're going to watch, are some of the most fun I've had playing tier limit in quite a while. We have one game in particular where we go second against Labyrinth, and we have like the most insane battle phase of any game I've played like within recent memory. So definitely stay tuned for that one. But yeah, I think the only thing that I don't have in this build that's pretty standard, or at least somewhat standard, is of course El Shadal Winda. I still have not crafted this card. Yeah, this is like probably something I should have done way back when tier limits first came out, but I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, well, especially with the new rumor that there's an alt art Winda possibly coming out, according to some people. I can neither confirm nor deny that, just repeating things that I've heard other people say. And if that's the case, I would obviously want to try to pull that before I just craft, you know, regular art Winda. So might still play Winda at some point in the future. If I were on Winda, I'd probably cut either the Earth Golem at Ignister, which is a super poly target, or maybe Psychic End Punisher, which very, very occasionally comes up. But honestly, it's kind of hard to make this with Destrudo, because Destrudo is going to be targeting a 4 and will be level 3, right? And we're not playing Horus cards, so we could still make it. I guess we could target like a 3, and some this is a 4, and then do like 4 plus 7 equals 11. But yeah, I don't know. It's not a card I find myself making a lot. Neither is Cross Sheep, but I do think I need to be making this card more often. In fact, there is one game, probably the first game we'll watch, where I think I could have made a Cross Sheep and then ended on like a Little Knight on my end board in addition to everything else I ended on. So Cross Sheep and Tier is just one of those cards I'm still not used to just, you know, being mindful to summon, right? So if you ever see a game where you're like, hey, why didn't Cross Sheep come out? I just probably totally forgot this card was in the extra deck. But yeah, I mean, like I said, you know, although I do like the Horus cards, and I love the, you know how I feel about Synchro cards, I really do think that this kind of like standard or pure style of Tearlament deck really does end up being the way to go. But that's the cool thing about Tearlament, is that as an archetype, as a deck, from a deck building perspective, it's pretty wide open, it's pretty flexible. And although I do think that Pure Elements is better than Horus Tier or Synchro Base Tier, I don't think those two variants are like that much worse than Pure Elements. I have definitely seen a lot of instances where Horus and Synchro based builds do well in tournaments, but I think the like consistency that a build like this offers by being able to max out on Screams and double up on stuff like Grief and Supreme Seamare, as well as being able to max out on Super Poly is quite good, especially in this meta where like U-Bell's running around so much. It's not hard for for Super Poly to get value off of U-Bell. Like for example, you could Super Poly away their Phantom. Well, no, actually you can't, because Phantom can't be used as a fusion material. But you could still Super Poly away off the Rage and Appaloosa to go into... Oh shit, no, because none of them are Cybers monsters. Ooh. Super Poly might not be as good. I'm thinking of like the kind of like standard end board of Appo plus Rage plus Phantom. You actually don't have a clean Super Poly on that board, but it's also not hard to Super Poly with your own monster, right? All in all, though, I think that this build is quite good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Oh, Call By. That was the other. I was trying to remember. There's one other card that I think is a flex spot, and I wanted to talk about, and that's Call By, which sounds kind of weird. Like, you wouldn't think that Call By would be a flex spot, but in a deck like Tearlament, I think the reason it does end up being a flex spot, and also Ash Blossom isn't even always played in Tearlament. It's only like 70% of the time, about from what I saw in my research. I think the main reason for that is that Max C, you can actually play around it pretty easily in this deck. Like, they'll usually Max C you on your first Fuser, so on turn 1 you can just like, instead of Kick Colosing for tier cash and then going into like more plays, you could just Kick Colos for like Crime or Soliac, depending on if you have like a monster in hand to send with Crime. You can just grab one of these trap cards and then set it and pass, and you still have ways to like get gas going during your opponent's turn, while also having disruption and also playing around the Max C. So I think that's one of the reasons why this deck is so good, and two, why you don't even see Call By, I think, more than 50% of the time, and even Ash Blossom is not like a mandatory inclusion for this deck like it is in a lot of others. So if you're looking for stuff to cut for additional engines, I would again probably start with the Griefs and Seamares. From there you could think about reducing Call Bys and possibly Super Polys, and then if you're really hurting for more space and want to stay around 40, I would maybe go for Ash Blossom next. Maybe, but also Ash Blossom is of course very good for disruption, and if you cut too much of the Ash Blossom plus like Super Poly stuff, right, then you're lacking on disruption in the form of hand traps and board breakers. So just something to be mindful of as you're deck building. Anyway, let's go ahead and break this list down card by card and then watch some duels. So we're on 3 Max C, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Tearlament's Havnus, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 2 Supreme Seamare, 2 Tearlament's Shyren, 3 Tearlament's Rhinoheart, 1 Keldo the Sacred Protector, 1 Mudora the Sword Oracle, 1 Kashira Fenrir, 1 Tearlament's Kashira, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Foolish Burial Goods, 2 Tearlament's Grief, 1 Primeval Planet Perlarino, 1 Pressured Planet Raitsoth, 3 Tearlament's Scream, 3 Super Polymerization, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Tearlament's Heartbeat, 1 Tearlament's Metanoise, 1 Trivikarma, 1 Tearlament's Crime, and then finally 1 Tearlament's Soliac. And that's going to do it for our main deck. For the extra, we're on 1 Muddragon of the Swamp, 1 Tearlament's Kiklos, 1 Garura, Wings of Resonant Life, 1 Earth Golem Adagnister, 1 Predoplant Dracostapelia, 1 Tearlament's Volcalos, 1 Tearlament's Kaleidoheart, 1 Ballon de Fleur, 1 Psychic End Punisher, 1 Time Thief Renewer, 1 number 60 Dugaris the Timeless, 1 Divine Arsenal Ah, Zeus, Sky Thunder, 1 Cross Sheep, 1 Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy, and then finally 1 SP Little Knight. That's going to do it for our list. Let's watch some duels. Alright, our first opponent's going to be on Infernoble, and I think that this game does a pretty good job of showcasing, honestly, just an absolutely busted turn 1 hand. I opened a lot of really good hands during this particular play session, and this is about as close to a custom turn 1 hand with this deck as you can get. You're going to, of course, lead with Scream and the normal summon Rhinoheart. We're going to want to chain block Rhinoheart, so it's Chain Link 1 and Scream is Chain Link 2. This will stop Ash Blossom from just being able to use against the Rhino. Not that it mattered, because we Scream milled another Rhinoheart and a Shyren as well. Here, I actually only activated the Havness and put back the Shiren because I was like, oh my god, I have too many things to do. Although looking back, I could have summoned Rhinoheart by pitching the Tier Cache and getting that in the graveyard for Kiklos. By the way, they did have Ash Blossom, so the Chain Block was valuable. But we can also just pitch Tier Cache for the Shiren, which I'm going to do right now. And that would get me 2 level 4 bodies to go into a rank 4 either way. Continuing with the custom mills here, we're milling just about every single one of our trap cards. Meta Noise is going to add back a Rhinoheart for follow-up plays. I get to Soul Lake for Havness to possibly use on the opponent's turn. Kiklos here is going to bring back the Tier Cache and then sack itself off. Well, send itself, rather. That way we can do the mills. I like to chain block the Kiklos' mill 5 with the Tier Cache's mill 3. Not that it usually matters, but we milled a Shiren and a Heartbeat, so just continuing with the custom opening turn 1 beyond a hand, and just like the top half of our deck. This is just wild. So, adding back the Crime, and then of course we're going to make the Roll Close as well. So I think, though, this is the game where I could have made a Cross Sheep at some point. Although, to be fair, we kind of milled everything all at once, so I don't know if I could have made Cross Sheep. Like, because here's the thing, I also think my board placement might have affected that a little bit too, because I could still make Cross Sheep and put it here, right? But I would need to special summon a monster to the other zone. I want to keep Shiren and overlay it with Rhinoheart for Redoer. I didn't mill like Snow or anything. If I milled Fairy Tale Snow, I could have just summoned that, linked it with Tier Cache, made Cross Sheep, overlaid for Redoer, and then Cross Sheep could have brought something back, and then we could have made an SP Little Knight. But I think maybe I didn't miss an opportunity to make Cross Sheep. I think I just ended up being one body short relative to like the order in which I activated all these effects because of how they got milled. So it's not even that bad to keep Tier Cache on the board, though. I can just sack it off for Roll Close, and that's fine. So I'll just make the Redoer and pass here. Redoer is going to grab the Noble Arms Museum, if I remember correctly. Yep, so we have the ability to draw a card if we want to, but of course the more valuable effect here is the Monster Detach. That way we can detach Shiren effect and get a fusion for the Kaleidoheart during the opponent's turn. They're going to lead with the Sublimationite. Of course, when I saw Noble Arms Museum, I already knew this was an Infernal deck, but the Sublimationite is actually not standard in pure Infernoble, so that led me to believe this might be closer to like a Bakonko Infernoble pile, right? That tends to play Sublimationite a little more often. Either way, I'm not going to really do anything except activate Scream here. See if I can get some cool mills. Nothing really, but we already milled enough custom cards during turn 1. So I was a little surprised here. They went to normal summon Renaud, and I thought they were going to link off into the Isolde, but they actually synchroed for Herald of the Arclight. And I was like, ooh, okay, so if they can make Isolde after this, can we stop it? I mean, the answer is, you would think would be yes, because we have the Tier Limits Crime. And we can still use Tier Limits Crime here, because sending is part of the effect and is the last thing to happen. So, although a Herald of the Arclight does banish any monster sent from the hand or main deck to the graveyard, we can still activate the Tier Limits Crime. Also, Herald of the Arclight only affects hand in main deck, so Roll Close can still send the Tier Cache from the field to the graveyard, and that'll still go to the yard. We also still, of course, have the Ash Blossom here, and Havness to activate its effect, as well as, again, the Redoer Detach to go into the Shiren. And I think my opponent, realizing this, just ultimately decided to concede. Despite having the Herald of the Arclight, I think even if they did have an additional way to go into Isolde on top of that, it would still not be enough. So yeah, that was just a total custom turn 1 hand. Let's watch a more back and forth game. I have that lab game I was talking about in the profile. Let's watch that. Okay, here is that duel against Labyrinth. This build is actually playing a lot more trap cards than a normal Labyrinth build does. Maxing out 3 ofs on pretty much like every trap card they're playing here, which is kind of interesting. So they're going to take the first turn. Our hand's looking pretty good. We do have the Super Poly, which I like seeing going second, but of course, yeah, they're just going to set 3 and end up passing back over to me here. So, draw for turn, Finecast Sheriff Fenrir, great top deck. I'm going to lead by specialing that and then adding Tier Cache from deck to hand. Then I'm going to activate Scream before activating the Shiren effect. Here, they're going to chain a Maxi. However, I can already see a path to lethal. Even through the Maxi, well, of course through the Maxi, but giving them like minimal draws, right? So I'm going to chain the Tier Cache effect. My original plan was to Shiren pitch Tier Cache. However, I'm going to special Tier Cache, banish Grief, and now I'm going to Shiren and pitch Fairy Tale Snow. milling 3. Tear Cache effect will mill a few more, as well as Scream, loading up the graveyard for that Fairy Tale Snow there. And you can probably see I'm just going to end up moving to battle phase and then summon Snow during the battle phase and go from there. Going to use the mill to Scream to add Solic again, moving to battle. Hitting with the Kashtira, hitting with Sharon, saving Fenrir in case I can get the banish if they try to summon something. So I'm going to actually go for Fairy Tale Snow next, and they're actually going to flip up Torrential here. Now that looks pretty bad, however, we can definitely still lethal here, because I get the effects of both Sharon and Tear Cache, and Fairy Tale Snow is of course not once per turn, so I can still use that as well. Tear Cache also ended up building a Rhinoheart there, and I did add that Solic, so there's another potential body. Here's Kiklos, and then of course Rhinoheart's going to bring itself back. Opponent's still drawing off the Max C, but we're in battle phase, so even if they're on Nib, I'm not as really scared of that here. At this point with the Torrential, I wasn't really sure what I was up against. I was like, I had the thought of Lab, but at the same time I was like, does Lab really play Torrential that often? So I was still kind of like guessing what these other face downs or cards in hand could be. Alright, so we're going to mill the Havness here, and the reason I went for the Fuser even under Maxi was to get the Rolkalos in play in case my opponent tried to special summon a monster to survive, and indeed, as soon as Rolkalos hits the board and attacks, we're going to flip up Karma Cannon. Now, I can still go for lethal here because I'm holding this Super Poly, and because you can actually fuse face down monsters. So I'm going to make the Fairy Tale Snow, or summon the Fairy Tale Snow rather, move to battle. Opponent is going to special summon the Lady Lab. So as I predicted, one of the ways that they were going to, the main way they're going to try to stop me from getting lethal here was to special summon a monster. However, we are actually still good to go as far as winning this duel. So it's important that I activate Super Poly while Fairy Tale Snow is still declaring the attack. Because if I wait, it's going to ask me if I want to do a replay. No, I won't want to battle into the Lady Lab, and then I won't be able to lethal here. However, by Super Polying now, again, while the attack is still being declared, I can pitch Tear Cache to fuse Rolkalos and the Lady Lab. This will allow me to summon out the Dragostapelia, but not only that, Rolkalos might have been face down, but was still fusion summoned, so I can still special her, and now, even if my opponent has another way to special summon a monster, we still have lethal. So, yeah, like I said during the deck profile, that's probably one of the more insane battle phases I've played in quite some time, and is truly a testament to how scary Tearlament is. I think one of the things that makes Tearlament most effective as a deck is the fact that you can just, like, at any point during either player's turn, you can just go into your full combo, pretty much, right? So, I think that's kind of a reason why it's a deck that's not, like, you don't play as many hand traps in this deck as a lot of others, and I think one of the reasons is that not only do you have stuff like Super Poly, of course, but also, it's not, like, hard to have plays, like, during your own standby phase, or if you open Havness, like, even during your opponent's turn 1, potentially, right? Or even Tear Cache in some situations. So the fact that you can make plays at any given point kind of makes the coin flip a little less important. Now, obviously, you still want to go first, but going second, not quite as bad for this deck as some others. We can do one more game. Yeah, let's do one more duel here, and then we will finish off with that one. Alright, this game that we're going to finish off with is against Fire King Snake Eye. I did have a U-Bell game, but it's not really that enthralling, honestly. My opponent activated Gates and then summoned Backing Beast and then just passed, and then I just won. So yeah, it wasn't that entertaining. Here we're going to be going first again. Another pretty much custom hand at this point here. I'm going to lead with Raitsoth for the Fenrir, special summon the Fenrir, and then Fenrir to add the Tear Cache. Of course, we're going to normal summon the Rhinoheart afterward. Opponent's going to Ash Blossom, which I do think this is the right point to Ash Blossom. When it comes to disrupting this deck, if you only have Ash Blossom and nothing else, I think you should probably use it against Rhinoheart. Of course, a lot of the time that won't be enough to just end their turn, but sometimes it is, and I think trying to bank on that is your best call, as opposed to stopping only one of Kiklos' effects. However, if you have Valor or Imperm, you should definitely save that for Kiklos, because it will stop both effects, instead of just the one. So, that's generally how I use Disruption against Tearlament. So, opponent doing pretty well here. Okay, one thing else I want to talk about in this game. You'll notice I did not use Call By against Ash Blossom. And you might be wondering why that is. That's because I had the Foolish Burial in hand, and I was kind of weighing my options a little bit, right? and I thought, okay, I could call by Ash Blossom, but what does Foolish Burial really get me if I use it as an extender on this turn? Not much more than I wouldn't be able to end on already, right? However, if I don't use the call by against Ash Blossom, if I think call by as a disruption on the opponent's turn is more valuable than Foolish as an extender on my turn, then I should not use the call by against Ash Blossom, let it go, and then use Foolish Burial to send my Habness to the graveyard instead. Then I'm keeping this card to use on my opponent's turn. So that was my thought process there. It's funny because you wouldn't think that call by would be a particularly tricky card to use, like on turn 1 especially, but there's nuance. I mean, there's nuance to just every aspect of disruption in the form of hand traps and board breakers and responses and negates and all that. A lot more than a lot of people realize. That video is in the works. I say as I haven't started it yet, but I have started gathering assets for it. That being my next hand trap video, which was voted on by both patrons and YouTube members. Anyway, gonna go for the roll close here, setting 3 and then just passing back over to the opponent. Really liking the position that we're in right here. Okay, they're going to lead with Bonfire on the Poplar. And actually, when the Poplar goes to special itself, I'm going to negate that with the Rokalos. My reasoning is that I wanted to mainly stop the Poplar search, but doing it this way also stops them from getting the body on the board. Of course, I wouldn't want my opponent to have OSS, but I was actually mainly worried about the Subversion here, so... they're going to call by on the Shyren. That we milled. It's a little annoying, but not that big of a deal at all. I mean, that would just summon a Kickalos here, which would just be more extension, so I'm not that beat up about it. Fire King Island going to pop Ulcanix and then add Kieran, and here's where we're going to make use of that call by that we saved. We get to use it against the Ulcanix here. I was a little concerned that they would go for the new Garunix ad. I'm actually a little surprised that they didn't, but... if they had, they would be able to special summon new Garunix and then activate the effect. We can actually still negate the effect of new Garunix, and then if our opponent still had extension or wanted to battle, potentially use Meta Noise as well to turn it face down. Meta Noise would also enable us to go into Kaleidoheart, which would be able to, of course, act as disruption as well. But as soon as they go to call by on the Ulcanix, that's it. They're done. Again, because they added Kieran. Wasn't really sure why they went for the Kieran in particular there. But, yeah, I mean, again, even if they had gone for the new Garunix, we would have been just fine. So, all right. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you so very much for watching. As always ever, I super duper appreciate it. Like I said before, the hand trap video is... again, I'm gathering assets for it. I want to start working on it here probably in the next week or so. And my main goal with it is to not just be like, okay, here's the most popular meta decks, and here's what to use hand traps against them. I might include a section like that towards the end of the video, but the main bulk of the video I think is going to be like, here is the mentality you need to have when using hand traps, right? We're going to talk about general case use of each individual hand trap instead of like, here's generally when you do it against meta decks. But again, we'll do that as well, probably. So anyway, that'll do it for this one. Like I said, let's move on now to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's again free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, but more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.